Thanks for joining us today. At City Life, we have one purpose, making it easy for people to say yes to Jesus. We believe today's message will empower you to do exactly that. But remember that church is so much more than a sermon you listen to. It's a living, breathing community that we invite you to be a part of. We hope to see you on a Sunday morning at City Life.
You saw in the intro, we are in our series, Encounters, Humanity 2.0. If you're just joining us for the first time, or maybe you're watching online for the first time, we have been on this series learning about the upgrade. Everyone say upgrade. Upgrade. How many of you ever had to get an upgrade because your phone got smashed? Yes, some of you have really sad-looking phones. Their little iPhone faces are destroyed. Well, you know, that smashed iPhone is actually a picture of every single one of us. How we come into this world. And, you know, if you're not familiar with the Jesus story, we believe this is how God's story started. God made everything good and humans broke it. Humans destroyed everything good. And even our own goodness, which means every human born is born not good. No matter how cute that little baby is. Oh, they are so adorable. But they are, like, not good at 2 a.m. when they're screaming, or when they throw like a throwdown fit in the middle of the grocery store when they're older. Like, how about that? No parent teaches their child how to throw themselves down in the middle of Walmart screaming bloody murder. I want the teddy bear! Like, no parent, any parents teach your children that? No. Where do they learn that? The bad stuff inside. But you know what? There's good news. And this is what Jesus' life was all about. The good news is that there is a whole different reality that is now a part of our existence, our world now, because of what Jesus did at the cross as a result of Easter. There is a new redeemed reality. We aren't just resigned to live just out of our brokenness. We can live in what's called new creation reality. And that's what this whole series has been about, is we've been discovering how God's new creation story is unfolding, especially through the different encounters that Jesus had with people after he rose from the dead. And the encounters that he had with certain people, it was significant because it wasn't just Jesus meeting up with random people. It was actually a picture of what God's heart was for people, all of us, not just for the people that Jesus met, but for every single one of us here and now. And so there's actually some clues in these different encounters of what is available for us now through this Humanity 2.0 upgrade. How many of you know, if you've ever updated your phone, there's some cool new features on it? You know what? You got some cool new features that are available to you. And that's what we want to learn how to live in. You want to learn to live in a new upgrade, yes? Well, today, the person we're going to look at today is actually the last guy that Jesus revealed himself to after his resurrection. And this guy is one of the most least likely people that you think Jesus would reveal himself to. Now, if you feel like you're one of the least likely to have anything to do with Jesus, anything to do with church, if you feel like you're one of the least likely to have any kind of use for God or positive feelings or positive interaction with God, you are going to be able to relate to this guy today, all right? So whether in this room, you're watching online, if you are feeling like the least likely, this guy is a guy you can relate to. Why was he the least likely? Well, he was part of a certain group of people that when Jesus was walking on the earth, this group of people was the people that Jesus argued with more than any other group of people. The people that he took a stand against, the people that he got mad at, the people that he rebuked more than any other people group. This was a group this guy was for. Now, you need to understand something about Jesus. He had a lot of shady, disreputable friends around him. But none of those friends, Jesus ever said, "Woe to you prostitutes." Okay, now if you don't know what woe to you means, that is not good news. That means everything bad you can imagine is coming your way, buddy. Like, woe to you. But Jesus never said, woe to you drunkards. Woe to you thieves. Woe to you liars. But this group, they had the woe to you from Jesus quite often. Woe to you Pharisees. That was the name of this group. Now the Pharisees, they were the religious leaders of Jesus' day. And they weren't just like the pastors or like the religious people and, smart people that look like, these guys were like the religious elite. They had thousands of rules that they lived by, certain ways of how to wash their hands and how to eat food and what food to eat when and what food not to eat when and when to cross the street and how not to cross the street and things you could look at and things you couldn't look at and all sorts of other things. They were crazy people. Religious, crazy people. And this guy was a Pharisee. His name was Saul. How many of you ever heard of a guy by the name of Saul? You might also know him as Paul. He changed his name to Paul because Saul, most scholars believe that Saul was his Hebrew name, but Paul ended up being around a lot of Greek people, so Paul is his Greek name. Same thing. But this guy, he wasn't just any Pharisees. He was a Pharisee of the Pharisees. Listen to how he described himself. This is many years later. He's writing in the book of Philippians 3, and he says, he's describing himself. Now, you're going to kind of hate Paul maybe by the end, but that's okay. That's kind of the whole point. He said, I had a reason to boast and impress people with my accomplishments, for my pedigree was impeccable. I was born a true Hebrew of the heritage of Israel as a son of a Jewish man. Now, that word, a Hebrew of the heritage of Israel, that meant he could trace his whole family line all the way back to Abraham. Isn't that crazy? Like, that was big stuff. Not only that, he said, I was from the tribe of Benjamin. Now, Benjamin was the elite tribe. It was the king. It was the tribe that was the only tribe that was loyal to King David when the whole nation fell apart hundreds of years earlier. And so the tribe of Benjamin was a special tribe. So Paul was saying, I'm all that. That's me. Yes. I was circumcised 8 days after my birth, and I was raised in the strict tradition of Orthodox Judaism, living a separated and devout life as a Pharisee. And concerning the righteousness of the Torah, which was the law, no one surpassed me. I was without peer. In other words, I was the best of the best, guys. That was me. Oh, yeah. See, I told you would hate Paul. He was like that guy at school. He just like, yeah, that guy. Furthermore, as a fiery defender of the truth, I persecuted the believers with religious zeal. So Saul wasn't just a Pharisee. He was a passionate Pharisee. How many of you know people who are like crazy passionate about something? Or maybe you're crazy passionate about like soccer or hockey or like, heaven forbid, why would you be passionate about the Flames? Oh, Jordan's gone. You're passionate? Are you? You better not. You're going to go in the back row. No Flames in the front row. Maybe you're not, maybe it's, maybe you're passionate about a certain band, or you're passionate about food, or you're passionate about CrossFit. I don't know why, but, some people are passionate about crazy things. Come on, passion makes you do crazy things, doesn't it? Even if it's good passion, when you're passionate for what's injustice, you're passionate for people who they don't have a voice. They can't stick up for themselves. There's people that you can be passionate about social justice, and passion is good, but passion makes you crazy sometimes, doesn't it? So much so that you get angry or kind of annoyed when people aren't passionate about the same things you're passionate about. Isn't that true? You're just like, what is wrong with you? How can you not like Vampire Weekend? See, I got you to look up. This was Saul. I just love that my daughter's front and center. She's going to get totally picked on all morning long. By the way, she can handle it. If you're thinking, this is the worst parent ever, she likes this kind of attention. So it's all right. It's her love language. Center of attention is her love language. All right, back to Saul. This was Saul's story. Okay, so where we pick up with Saul, this is a year or two after Jesus' resurrection. He had already returned to the Father. He'd met with the disciples, and then boom, he disappeared. They didn't see him again. He said, I'm gone. I'm sending the Holy Spirit. This was 2 years after the fact, and the church had exploded, but Paul was living. And see, Paul, He was a stickler. He was committed to the old ways, the old Jewish tradition. But these new believers, most of them Jewish, a lot of them now becoming a whole bunch of non-Jewish people believing, they were committed to this troublemaker named Jesus. And this was a problem because this group, they were starting to threaten the peace that the Jewish people had with Rome, who were the ruling government or the ruling people over the Jews. So the Jews was like this sub-nation in this Roman rule. And the Romans kind of let them have their thing and do their thing and keep their culture as long as it didn't interrupt things too much. But the Jews were now proclaiming, Caesar is not the king, Jesus is. And that's a problem. And so not only was Paul mad at these guys because they were starting to create rumblings with Rome, but they also believed that Jesus was the Messiah. And that was the worst heresy for a Pharisee, because all Pharisees, their whole life was about preparing and being ready and waiting for the Messiah. And for these guys that said, the Messiah was here, and the Pharisees missed him, that was the greatest shame you could imagine as a Pharisee. But this was this group, and so Paul was livid to the point where he was doing everything he possibly could to chase down, arrest, and even have killed every believing Christian he could find. And so one day he is on the road to a city called Damascus, and on this road, guess what? He encounters Jesus. He is on his way to get papers to authorize him to arrest and put in prison every believer he could find. And instead, there is this explosion of light. Blasts him. He falls to the ground. There is this loud voice booming, and it says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And he can't see anything because it is just like blasted light. And he's like, who are you, Lord? And he says, I'm Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Get up, go into the city, and you're going to be told what you're to do. Now we're just going to pause a minute because there was something super significant. See, who was Paul persecuting? He was persecuting the church. But who did Jesus say that Paul was persecuting? Jesus. And you know what? I think it's so important that we catch this. That Jesus considered the persecuting of the church the persecuting of himself. Man, I think it's good food for thought. And note to self that whenever we are tempted to persecute the church with our words, with our complaints, with our attitude, and our bad-mouthing the church. We're not bad-mouthing the church. We're bad-mouthing Jesus. You can say ouch. That's okay. It's all right. We're all in that boat. But this is what happens. Paul is blinded. He can't see anything, so his friends pick him up. They lead him into the city in Damascus. He's just sitting there. He is like so blown out of his mind. He's just like, what the heck just happened? He can't see anything. He is overcome, and he sits there for 3 days, blind, in the dark, doesn't eat or drink anything. At the same time, on the other side of the city, God starts talking to another guy by the name of Ananias. And Ananias was a believer. He was part of the church. He was a follower of Jesus. And God speaks to Ananias and he says, Ananias, I need you to go on to the other side of Damascus, to this street. It's called Straight Street. And on this street, you're going to find a place where there's this guy by the name of Saul. And I need you to go to him and I need you to give him this message. And in the middle, Ananias is like, wait a minute. Wait. I've heard of this guy. He's evil. I'm not going to see him. Do you know what he does? He persecutes, puts in jail, and even authorizes to have killed Christians. And that's me. I'm going. And God's like, oh, yes, you are, Ananias. I need you to go. I need you to take this message to Paul. And this is what I need you to tell him. I need you to tell him I have chosen him to be my instrument to bring my name far and wide to outsiders, to kings, and to the people of Israel as well. Can you imagine Ananias going to hunt Saul down? He's like, is Saul here? Saul here? You guys know where Saul is? Like, Saul! We don't know where Saul is. And he finds out where Saul is, and he goes in, and he's like, Saul, God sent me to you, and this is the message. You are going to be his spokesman. You are going to be his mouthpiece to kings, to the Jews, but also to all of the Gentile nations. And for a Pharisee, Gentiles were like, oh, no. No, we don't do Gentiles. We don't even go near them. But Saul is like, whoa, what the heck just happened? And Ananias prays for him. And it says something like scales fell off of Saul's eyes and he could see. He was healed. It says he was baptized. And then they take him to the rest of the disciples. Can you imagine how that would have gone down? You have a church and all of a sudden the terrorist of all the church comes into the service and you're like, what the heck happened? It's like people are like, whoa, we're done. Long story short, though, God ends up commissioning Saul, changes his name to Paul, to be the number one voice of God's good news message. The news that God had started something brand new on the planet that was for every single person. And Paul went on to do more for the kingdom of God than any other individual. 2/3 of what we call the New Testament was written by Paul. So why Saul? Why would God pick this guy? Well, the practical reasons are he was brilliant. Nobody knew scripture, nobody knew history like Saul. But he was also passionate. And God knew if this new thing that he was doing was going to succeed, it was going to require passion. It was going to require somebody that was just a little bit bullheaded, just a little bit crazy, that could take no for an answer. And would not take no for an answer. And they would just like bulldoze us like, oh, no. But I also think there was a symbolic reason that God chose Paul. It's because more than just a practical side, his life was a blazing example of what God was doing for all people, all humanity. And it was this. See, Saul's life was a picture of how we can have everything going for us and be so blind. We can be the best. You know what? Even Paul, he thought his life was so amazing because he was passionately pursuing what he was passionate about. And you know what? You can be pursuing your passion in life and still have that passion completely misguided. We can think we're doing amazing in life. Oh, I'm good. Like Paul, my pedigree was impeccable. And we think we're doing so good in life. We think our devotion to blank, like fill in the blank, whatever blank is you, we can think that because we're so devoted to this, we're doing really good. When in actuality, all of that devotion, we can be totally wrong in our understanding of God and his purpose and what he's wanting to do. But here's the thing, God still picked Saul. And see, God still said, this is what he said, you're mine, Saul, and I want you. And see, that's what God says to every single one of us. The ones that think we're all that, the ones that think we're good, but also the ones that think we are the least likely. God's going, you're mine and I want you. See, Saul's life was a picture of the grace that God was extending to all of humanity. God's grace not only to humans, but through humans. God's grace, which is his healing and restoring power. See, many years later, at the end of Paul's life, he's writing to one of his closest friends, and this is how he's describing himself. He's thinking back on his life, and he says, this is who I was. He says, despite the fact that at one time I was slandering the things of God, persecuting and attacking his people, God was still merciful to me because I acted in ignorance apart from the truth. He said, but he poured his grace over me, and I was flooded in an abundance of the grace and faith and love that can only be found in Jesus, the Anointed. Here's a statement worthy of trust. Jesus, the Anointed, the liberating King, he came into the world to save sinners, and I am the worst of them all. How is that? I am the worst of them all. The Pharisee that was considered the best of the best now considers himself the worst of them all. See, what is God's grace? Kind of funky ideas. And God's grace, the simplest definition, it means unmerited favor. It means you get something you do not deserve. And, maybe a way to describe this in our contemporary setting is imagine you have the worst driving record ever. I mean, You have tickets up the wazoo. It is so bad. You are called into court. You're going to appear before the judge, and you're going to lose your license. And not only that, you're going to be stuck in prison. It is so bad. Except you show up to court, and when you're ready to get your sentence, the judge stands up and he says, "We have found another way to deal with your situation. We found a way to deal with your really, really, really bad record. Now, we can't overlook it because that would not be just. We can't just turn a blind eye and say, go, because if we did that, we'd have to do it for somebody else, and that would create chaos." So this is what's happened. There's somebody that has an absolutely perfectly spotless record. And they've agreed to take your bad record, and in exchange, you get their perfect record. Your name is going to go on their perfect record, and their name is going to go on your really, really, really bad record. And you're like, who the heck would do that? And the judge is like, I would. So that's a picture of what God has done for us. Our record sucked. It was so bad. There was no way out of the mess we are born into as broken humans. And one of the most epic descriptions Paul wrote describing grace was, again, years later in one of his letters to the Ephesians in 2 verse 4. It says, "But God, with the unfathomable richness of his love and mercy focused on us, united us with the Anointed One." In other words, he united us with Jesus and infused our lifeless souls with life, even though we were buried under mountains of sin. He saved us by his grace. He raised us up with him, seated us in the heavenly realms with our beloved Jesus, the Anointed, the liberating King. And he did this for a reason, so that for all eternity we will stand as a living testimony, not to the incredibleness of our goodness, but to the incredible riches of God's grace and kindness that he freely gives to us by uniting us with Jesus the Anointed. For it's by God's grace that you have been saved. You received it through faith. It was not our plan or our effort. It is God's gift, pure and simple. You didn't earn it. Not one of us did, so don't go around bragging that you must have done something amazing. You know, we have been singing about this all morning. Your grace holds the ground where the grave did. That's what we're singing about. That's what we're singing about. It. God's grace holds our bad, really bad record. And God infused us to Jesus. In other words, that means he considered us in Jesus when Jesus was on the cross. And all of our badness went on him, and we got all of his goodness. That's what grace is. And see, it's the difference is some people think, grace is, you don't have to do any work. You just kind of sit back and, it's all a Jesus thing. Grace is work, but it's a different kind of work. It's the difference between swimming in a reality that someone else has made possible for you and trying to fill the pool yourself. What does grace do? See, grace isn't just something we receive. In fact, if you think you just receive grace, but you don't let grace go through you, you actually haven't received grace. Grace is this, it is only grace when it is this full circle. See, anything less than grace being released through us, it's not grace. And see, the grace, what does grace do? Romans 3:23, Paul, again, he wrote many years later, he said, since we've compiled this long and sorry record as sinners and prove that we're utterly incapable of living the glorious lives God wills, God did it for us. Out of sheer generosity, he put us in right standing with himself, a pure gift. And that word gift literally means grace. He got us out of the mess we were in and restored us. Everyone say restored. That is a really important thing. He restored us to where he always wanted us to be. And he did it by means of Jesus Christ. God sacrificed Jesus on the altar of the world to clear the world of sin. Having faith in Jesus sets us in the clear. God decided on this so the world in the clear, to set the world in the clear with himself. Through the sacrifice of Jesus, finally taken care of the sins he'd so patiently endured. This isn't only clear, this is now, this is current history. God sets things right and also makes it possible for us to live in his rightness. See, this is what grace is. Grace accepts as is, but then it also takes responsibility for restoring back to as was God's original intention for that human being. See, that's the full circle of grace. See, grace isn't turning a blind eye to sin. Grace isn't just God excusing behavior. Grace isn't God saying, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, just keep doing what you're doing, since I'm going to forgive you anyway, or since, you're all forgiven in Jesus on the cross, we can just live however, you want, it's all going to be okay. That is not grace. That is a cheap alternative. But see, God's grace accepts us as we are, but then he works on us to make us as was, his original intention. And see, God's intention for humans was that we would be able to reflect God in his goodness and in his rightness. See, our world is craving this kind of acceptance. But it settled for a cheap, ineffective alternative called tolerance. And see, tolerance just leaves you feeling empty. And a lot of times, grace and tolerance get mixed up. People think they're the same thing, but they're not. And see, tolerance actually doesn't value people. It just puts up with them. Tolerance enables you to keep a distance. Oh, you do you. I'll do me. Like, just do your thing over there. It's fine. You want to do your thing. And you know what? This is what our world wants. They think they want. See, tolerance, it might provide acceptance, but tolerance doesn't carry the power to heal and restore a human being to the original intended purpose that they were created for. See, grace is not just acceptance. Grace is acceptance with the commitment to heal and transform and never leaves as is. And see, our world is, we got a whole society, we got a whole culture, we got all sorts of people that are like, accept me and take me as I am and just accept me. You know what? That is not enough. I want to tell you a story just to wrap up, and this is actually, it's funny, it's a cute little true story, and it's a story about a little village church choir over in Europe. And it was terrible. This church choir was horrible. They were so bad. They've been out without a choir director for years. And so you know what happens to a church choir when you don't have anybody directing you and teaching you how to sing and how to adjust your pitch and how to recognize a harmony and how to sing in tune? You get bad. Because no matter how much you practice, and that was the problem with this choir, they sucked. They practiced, they were genuine, they loved Jesus, they were committed, they were diligent, they were so faithful in practicing. But how many of you know if you just keep rehearsing bad, practice does make perfect. You just get perfectly bad. It just gets worse. You don't get better. But one day, a new choir director came. And the choir director came to the rescue. And this choir director was very kind, very gentle, sat down with them, figured out where they were at, what their skill level was, what they could do, what they couldn't do. And he was so gracious. In an act of grace, he didn't get mad at them because they sucked. He didn't yell at them for singing out of tune. He didn't tell them they were terrible and they're never going to amount to anything and they should just quit. Oh, no. He took them as they were, but then he started working with them to change them, to transform them from a choir that sucked to a choir that could actually sing. And that's exactly what happened. They got good. They got really good. Same people, different sound. Isn't that a great story? But I love it because this is a picture of what God has done for us. He has taken us in our really out of tune with being a real humanness. In other words, he's taken us in our out of tune moral state. And he's taken us as is. And now he wants to work on us to be taking us out of tune and wants to bring us into being in tune with what it really means to be a true human. And this is what Jesus has done. And see, he's a great choir director. We don't have to learn how to sing before he starts working on us. We just accept his gift of leadership and direction in our life. And then he teaches us how to really sing. And see, when you accept the new choir director, oh, this is what happens. You don't just keep singing about it. It's not just about you. Something changes inside of you. See, and when somebody starts teaching you a skill you couldn't do before, and you're like, oh, this is how it is. And you start getting the tapes for what it feels like. Oh, this is what it sounds like. Now you start getting interested in music. You start wanting to learn about how to harmonize, how to adjust your voice, how to get your pitch right, how to do this and how to do that. You just want to start learning all you can because all of a sudden something has come alive in you and you're like, I could be different. I could learn how to sing. And then you start singing on tune, and then you start bringing your little now tuned voice in with a whole bunch of other people that are singing in tune, and you're like, this sounds good. We're a choir, and man, this sounds amazing. Now people, they're going to hear us, and they're going to hear a good sound. They might even say it sounds like heaven. See, what we're really looking forward to is singing in tune. See, this is the power of grace. God's grace in our lives. It meets us where we're at, but it will never let us stay where we're just where we're at. Grace accepts as is, but takes responsibility. And see, why do we need to get ourselves in tune? It's because, see, this is a second part of grace. This is where we need to get ourselves into, because our world is just settled for tolerance, and tolerance is such a bad substitute. See, the heart that is broken, that's crying out, accept me as I am, it actually doesn't just want acceptance. See, that heart that's broken, that's accept me, just take me as I am, and just accept me and accept me. What it's actually longing for is perfection. The perfection we were originally created in. When God created human beings in his image as perfect and without spotless, but then we chose self instead of God and messed us up. And we're born in that brokenness. But see, the broken heart, our broken world is crying out for what only grace can deliver. And see, if we get ourselves in tune and we receive the grace of God and let it transform us, then we can begin singing this song that brings other people home. Our world that's lost and broken can hear that song and it can draw their hearts to God. That's what grace does to and through us. I want to invite you to stand. And I want us to pray. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to pray with me and just say, God, I need your grace. God, we need your grace. Say, Jesus, thank you for your grace. That you take me as I am. But you are even more committed to not leaving me as I am. Jesus, thank you. Thank you. God, thank you. God, we want to be those that receive your grace because our world so desperately needs it. And just with every eye closed, you know what, maybe you're watching online as well. We're going to pray a prayer here just in a minute again, all of us together. And it's a prayer of saying yes to Jesus. It's saying, yes, God, I want to experience your grace. I want to experience what it means to have a new beginning, to live in this new upgrade 2.0, a brand new way of living. And if this is you, we're all praying together, and you can be included in this prayer too. Once you pray, if you pray with us, just say, Jesus, thank you for everything that you accomplished. Thank you for making it possible that there's a new way to be human. And I say yes to receiving your spotless record in exchange for my really bad record. Jesus, I take you as my Lord. Come lead and direct my life into the right tune. Your purpose for my life to reflect you. Amen. Amen. Can we give God thanks this afternoon? God, thank you. God, thank you. Thank you for a new beginning. Thank you for a new start. Father, I thank you for what you're doing and those that are watching online too, and the brand new thing that you're started here today. In Jesus' name, amen.
We hope today's message encouraged you. If you want to take your next step in saying yes to Jesus, you can always contact us at cty.lc or fill out the next step section on the City Life app. It's an honor as a church to play just a small part in what God is doing in your life. We look forward to seeing you soon here at City Life.